The sun was just beginning to set as Clara drove her moving truck down the tree-lined streets of the Maplewood neighborhood. It was a picturesque area, with charming houses adorned in cheerful colors, blooming flower beds, and friendly neighbors waving from their porches. Clara had long dreamed of living in a community like this, where a sense of belonging thrived, and she could finally settle down after years of searching for a home. As she parked and stepped out of the truck, Clara's heart swelled with excitement. She could picture herself enjoying sunny mornings on the front porch with her beloved llama, Lenny, who had been her constant companion through many adventures. Lenny was no ordinary pet. He was playful and affectionate, often stealing the limelight wherever they went, and he had an uncanny ability to make friends with everyone he met. However, Clara's elation quickly turned to confusion when she noticed a small group of stern-looking individuals approaching her front yard. Clad in crisp polo shirts and armed with clipboards, they introduced themselves as members of the Homeowners Association, HOA. Their expressions were serious as they began explaining the community rules that governed life in Maplewood. "Welcome to the neighborhood," one of them said, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach their eyes. "We just wanted to remind you about some key bylaws regarding pets." As they explained the regulations, Clara felt a knot tightening in her stomach. "Exotic animals aren't allowed within the community," they stated flatly. "Unfortunately, that includes llamas." Clara's heart sank. "But Lenny is a part of my family. He's harmless and well-behaved." She tried to plead her case, but their response was unwavering. "Rules are rules, ma'am," another member interjected brusquely. "You'll need to remove him by the end of the week or face fines." The meeting ended without any resolution, leaving Clara feeling defeated but determined not to give up on Lenny. As she pondered her options later that evening, she recalled how the previous owner had mentioned something curious during the house tour, a vague reference to unusual legal matters involving Lenny. A spark of hope ignited within her. Perhaps there was more to Lenny's story than simply being an exotic pet. The next day, Clara began digging through the paperwork left by the previous owner. As she sifted through various documents, she stumbled upon a startling piece of information. Lenny had been named as the legal successor on the HOA board. It seemed that in a quirky twist of fate and clever planning, he held actual voting power within this very HOA, an oversight that had gone unaddressed for far too long. With this newfound knowledge bubbling with excitement, Clara sought out an attorney to help navigate this peculiar situation. Enter Geraldine, a local lawyer known for her eccentric approach to law and love for all things unconventional. When Clara shared her story and Lenny's unique legal status, Geraldine's eyes sparkled with mischief. "This is brilliant," Geraldine exclaimed while examining the documents. "We can use this loophole to your advantage. Let's go shake things up at those HOA meetings." What followed was an exhilarating whirlwind as Clara and Geraldine prepared for their first HOA meeting together, with Lenny in tow. As they walked into the room filled with skeptical board members and anxious residents, Clara felt a surge of confidence with Lenny beside her. It was time to turn the tables on those who sought to stifle her freedom and joy. With every vote that Lenny cast, supported by Clara's passionate speeches, change began to unfold within Maplewood. The once stuffy atmosphere started transforming into one where creativity flourished and laughter echoed across the room. Little did they know, this was just the beginning of an unexpected adventure that would challenge everything they thought they knew about community living. The following day dawned with Clara's anticipation mingling with the concerns of the previous evening. She had hardly slept, her mind racing with thoughts about the HOA's restrictions on exotic animals. As Lenny grazed peacefully in the backyard, Clara stared out the kitchen window, taking in the charming neighborhood that had once seemed like a dream come true, now felt reminiscent of a cage. She had barely settled into her new home when the doorbell rang. With a quick glance at Lenny, she opened the door to find two serious-looking HOA members standing on her porch, armed not only with clipboards but also an air of authority that made her stomach churn. "Good morning, Clara," one of them said, his tone lacking warmth. "We need to discuss your llama." Clara took a deep breath, steeling herself for the confrontation. "Yes, I was just informed about the exotic animal policy," she replied, trying to sound composed. The second member, a stern woman wearing oversized glasses, folded her arms and continued. "As outlined in our bylaws, exotic animals are strictly prohibited in Maplewood properties. Unfortunately, this includes your llama." She glanced at Lenny, who had wandered closer to the porch, curiously peering at the visitors. Clara felt her heart sink further. "Lenny is not just a pet. He's part of my family. He's well-behaved and doesn't cause any trouble." Man exchanged a look with his colleague before responding. That may be true, but rules are rules. You have until the end of the week to remove him from the premises or face fines, significant fines. His gaze was unyielding as he handed her a printed notice detailing the penalties. With every word they uttered, Clara's frustration mounted. The HOA seemed determined to strip her of her joy and the comfort Lenny had brought into her life. But you don't understand. He has been by my side through so much. Is there really no way to make an exception? She avoided Lenny's gaze. Pleading seemed futile. Nothing personal, the woman replied dismissively. We simply uphold community standards. If you wish to continue living here without charges against you, it would be best to comply. With that statement hanging heavily in the air, they turned on their heels and walked away, leaving Clara feeling more isolated than ever. Returning inside, she sank onto her couch as tears threatened to spill over. This quaint neighborhood that had once promised acceptance now felt hostile and unwelcoming. As she stroked Lenny's soft fur for comfort, a flicker of determination ignited within her. There had to be more to this story than mere bylaws. In the days that followed, Clara immersed herself in researching everything about the HOA's regulations and history. It was during one late-night session filled with coffee and scattered papers that she stumbled upon something intriguing. Concerning documents left by the previous homeowner hinted at unusual agreements involving Lenny. Clara flashed back to snippets of conversation she'd had during the house tour. She recalled how that owner had mentioned devising clever plans and loopholes. With renewed hope, Clara spent hours poring over paperwork until she finally found it. An official document from years past that named Lenny as a legal successor on the HOA board, a title he still held due to a lapse in updating records. This was no ordinary pet. Lenny had actual voting power. Excitement coursed through Clara as this revelation solidified her resolve to defy the HOA's demands. The next step was clear. She needed professional guidance and fast. Picking up her phone, she began searching for attorneys known for their unconventional methods. Little did she know that help was on its way in a most unusual package. Geraldine, an eccentric attorney with an affinity for quirky legal dilemmas and a penchant for llamas. This could be exactly what Clara needed to turn her fortunes around and reclaim her place in Maplewood with Lenny by her side. Clara sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by an assortment of papers and documents that she had pulled from various files left by the previous homeowner. Her heart raced as she meticulously combed through each page, searching for any glimmer of hope that might help her keep Lenny in their new home. As the afternoon sun streamed through the window, she felt a mix of determination and frustration. The HOA's ultimatum loomed over her like a dark cloud. After what felt like hours of scanning paperwork, Clara finally stumbled upon something unusual, a dusty old agreement with a peculiar clause that made her sit up straight. The document outlined various conditions related to the HOA and included specific mentions of property regulations. But it was the final line that caught her attention. The named successor on this account is Lenny, the llama. One llama and a little audacity changed everything. Sometimes, timing changes everything, just like subscribing to this channel seems to bring unexpected allies and even more unexpected bylaws. But back to the story. Clara rubbed her eyes in disbelief, convinced she must be misreading the text. She reread it again and again, each glance fueling her excitement. Lenny wasn't just any ordinary pet. According to this document, he had been legally designated as a successor on the HOA board by the previous owner. It seemed they had intentionally given him a position of authority within the community, an audacious act that created an unexpected loophole in the rules. With trembling hands, Clara examined the paperwork more closely, realizing that this oversight had never been corrected. Legally, Lenny still held voting power within the HOA framework. The implications of this revelation were massive. If Clara could prove Lenny's status as a board member, she could challenge not only their demand for his removal, but also potentially reshape their approach to community living. Excitedly, Clara reached out to Geraldine, the quirky attorney she had found in her search for legal assistance. As they met for coffee to discuss the newfound discovery, Geraldine's expression shifted from curiosity to exhilaration. "Are you telling me that your llama is officially part of their governance structure?" she asked incredulously while twirling a pen between her fingers. "Yes, legally he has a seat at the table," Clara replied, barely able to contain her enthusiasm. "This is gold," Geraldine exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "If we play this right, we could turn things upside down at the next HOA meeting." With time running out before the HOA's deadline approached, Clara enlisted Geraldine's help in preparing to present Lenny's legal standing to the board. They meticulously crafted a strategy that would not only assert Lenny's right to remain in Maplewood, but also challenge the archaic bylaws that stifled joy and individuality within the neighborhood. As they prepared for their first meeting together, Lenny trotting by Clara's side, nervous anticipation filled Clara's stomach. She dressed him in a bright decorative harness covered in flowers. After all, if they were going to make an impression, they might as well do it with flair. Upon entering the HOA meeting room filled with skeptical glances from board members and residents alike, Clara felt a pulse of anxiety. But when Lenny trotted into view with his proud demeanor and vibrant adornments, murmurs filled the air. "Ladies and gentlemen," Clara began confidently, gesturing toward Lenny beside her. "I'd like you to meet our new board member." Laughter erupted among some audience members while others looked taken aback. Yet Clara pressed on, presenting documents that established Lenny's rightful place within their organizational structure. The room buzzed with disbelief as she explained how their bylaws would need to be reevaluated, not just for a llama, but for all pets deemed exotic. As discussions ensued about what it meant for animals like Lenny to be acknowledged within community governance, Clara felt an exhilarating shift begin to unfold. A challenge against antiquated norms was brewing right before her eyes. What started as a confrontation transformed into an empowering dialogue about inclusion and diversity within Maplewood. That night marked not only Lenny's unexpected ascent into local politics, but also Clara's journey toward making profound changes in a community that once felt closed off. Little did they know that this was just the start of something truly exciting and transformative for both residents and creatures alike in Maplewood. With newfound confidence, Clara and Geraldine sat down for their first strategy session at a lively coffee shop adorned with eclectic art. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, mingling with the sounds of laughter and conversation from the other patrons. Clara watched as Geraldine animatedly waved her hands, gesturing as she spoke, her wild curls bouncing enthusiastically with each point. "I can't believe Lenny has a seat on the board. This opens up so many avenues for us," Geraldine exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "I mean, who would have thought a llama could be part of HOA politics? We're going to turn things on their head." Clara couldn't help but smile at Geraldine's exuberance. The attorney had an unconventional approach that was both refreshing and inspiring. Dressed in vibrant, mismatched clothing that screamed individuality, Geraldine felt like a breath of fresh air amid the stuffy world of legal proceedings. "Okay, let's break this down," Geraldine said, pulling out a notepad and scribbling furiously. "We need to highlight the absurdity of the situation while showcasing Lenny as a symbol of community and inclusion." Imagine the residents' faces when they realized their concerns might actually be listened to. As they brainstormed ideas, Clara felt her heart lift. Geraldine's enthusiasm was contagious. The attorney proposed that they create a charming presentation for the next HOA meeting that would not only focus on Lenny's legal status, but also emphasize the benefits of having more inclusive pet policies across the community. "We'll start with a lighthearted introduction to Lenny," Geraldine suggested, grinning widely. "Picture this, you walk in with him in his floral harness, and we open with something catchy like 'Meet Lenny, our newest board member, who actually knows how to vote.'" She laughed at her own joke, and Clara chuckled along. Building on this momentum, they discussed how to incorporate humor into their arguments while pointing out how outdated the current regulations were. "Let's get those residents thinking about what it truly means to live in a diverse community," Geraldine said with fervor, "and highlight how absurd it is to punish someone for simply wanting to bring joy into their lives." Their planning sessions became a weekly ritual filled with laughter and brainstorming sessions. Clara found herself looking forward to these meetings. Geraldine's quirky outlook on law transformed what could have been a nerve-wracking experience into something invigorating and fun. As the day of the HOA meeting approached, Clara felt her anxiety creeping back in. However, she reminded herself that Lenny was not just a pet. He was now her ally in reshaping community guidelines. With each passing moment, she knew they were embarking on something special together, an opportunity not just for Lenny but for everyone who lived in Maplewood. On that fateful meeting day, Clara arrived early with Lenny trotting proudly by her side. As they entered the austere room filled with board members and curious residents, she could feel all eyes on them. Geraldine was there too, an electric presence in her vibrant outfit, which seemed to radiate positivity. "Remember," Geraldine whispered as they took their seats at the front of the room, "you've got this. Just speak from your heart and let Lenny charm them. When it was finally time for Clara to present, she stood up straight, took a deep breath, and smiled down at Lenny. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began confidently, "I'd like you to meet not just my beloved companion, but also our esteemed new board member." The atmosphere lightened as Lenny's quirky nature captured attention. Murmurs of laughter followed as he leaned in curiously toward the audience. Clara shared Lenny's story, the joy he brought her, how he had been part of her journey through life's ups and downs, and then transitioned into discussing his unexpected legal standing. With Geraldine supporting her from the sidelines, Clara felt empowered as they challenged the norms that bound them. This whimsical yet profound approach ignited conversations about community values and truly listening to one another, embodying how even the most unexpected figures, like a llama named Lenny, could influence positive change. The following weeks were a whirlwind of HOA meetings, each one filled with a mix of tension, laughter, and unexpected moments as Clara and Lenny became staples in the community governance. Each time they stepped into the conference room, Clara felt a strange blend of excitement and apprehension. There was Lenny, adorned in his signature floral harness, strutting beside her with an air of confidence that somehow made both of them feel empowered. At the first meeting they attended together, Clara noticed the expressions on the faces of the board members as they entered, a mixture of confusion and incredulity. Did they really expect to take this llama seriously? Clara reminded herself that this was exactly what they needed, to disrupt the norm and challenge the ridiculousness of their regulations. "Ladies and gentlemen," Clara began with a steady voice, gesturing towards Lenny, "I'd like to introduce our newest board member." A ripple of laughter spread through those seated at the long table, lightening the atmosphere just enough for her to continue. "Lenny here isn't just my pet, he is legally recognized as a voting member on this board." The faint sound of snickers persisted. It was proving difficult for some to reconcile this reality with what they perceived as sensible governance. Despite the laughter directed towards them, there was power in her words, a realization that slowly dawned upon even the sternest members. As discussions proceeded about community improvements and new policies regarding pets, Clara leaned into her role, often relying on Lenny's presence to share her points. Instead of simply presenting serious proposals, she infused humor into her discussions. "If we're going to keep llamas out," she quipped one evening during a debate about fines for pet-related disturbances, "we might as well consider banning all species that don't bring joy. I can assure you Lenny is not causing chaos, quite the opposite." In response, Lenny nonchalantly chewed on hay while seated comfortably next to her, fully enjoying his moment in the limelight. Residents began warming up to them, no longer just seeing Clara merely as the woman with the llama, but rather recognizing them as an integral part of conversations that had real implications for everyone living in Maplewood. As meetings unfolded week after week, they found themselves tackling various topics: enforcing leash laws, organizing community cleanup efforts involving pets, and ensuring walking paths were accessible not only for dogs but also for llamas and even alpacas. Surprisingly enough, Lenny had become a touchstone for many residents who loved animals but felt left behind by rigid rules that didn't account for individuality or playfulness. With every discussion came more ridiculous scenarios. Lenny's voting power became fodder for spirited debates. At one memorable gathering concerning fines levied on homeowners for minor infractions, like leaving trash bins out too long, Clara challenged them with an unexpected motion. "Why don't we allow household pets to cast votes as well? If my llama can do it legally, why not?" Laughter erupted across the room again. Even some board members chuckled at how absurd it sounded, while nearly everyone recognized how refreshing their hijinks had become in an otherwise mundane meeting structure. As time passed and community members gathered around these bizarre scenarios revolving around Lenny's status on the board, including discussions around creating alpaca-friendly walking paths, they began to realize this new direction could lead not only to playful enforcement, but also fostered camaraderie among diverse residents. Eventually, Clara found herself vetoing fines and orchestrating positive changes within Maplewood alongside her quirky attorney. The once rigid governing structure transformed into something dynamic where laughter mingled seamlessly with heartfelt conversations about inclusion and acceptance. A tangible shift blossoming from what had originally seemed like an uphill battle against outdated bylaws. What started as a serious confrontation quickly morphed into an extraordinary tale spun around friendship forged between a woman and her beloved llama. a reminder that even absurdities could pave pathways toward meaningful change through shared experiences amongst neighbors who cared deeply about their community spirit. As Clara and Lenny continued to attend the HOA meetings, the dynamics shifted at an astonishing pace. The once stiff atmosphere became infused with laughter and camaraderie, with the board members gradually acknowledging not only Lenny's unusual status, but also the positive impact he had on the community. Each meeting saw Clara embracing her role more confidently, and Lenny, with his charming demeanor and floral harness, became a beloved figure in the room. However, as Clara's influence grew, so did the tension with the HOA leadership. Some board members who believed strongly in the original bylaws began to feel threatened by this newfound momentum for change. Sensing their discomfort, Clara decided to leverage Lenny's voting power strategically to propose various updates to the existing regulations. At one particularly heated meeting, the topic of discussion was a series of fines levied against residents for minor infractions, like flower pots placed too far from the house or bikes parked on sidewalks. Clara seized the opportunity to address these unwarranted penalties head-on. "I think it's time we reassess what really constitutes a community violation," she stated boldly, glancing down at Lenny, who had settled comfortably beside her. "After all, if my llama can vote, surely we can consider the wishes of our residents." With a playful grin, she continued, "Let's start with a new policy. If we're going to issue fines, let's make sure they're actually warranted. Maybe we can even create a llama veto that allows Lenny to decide what fines are silly." Laughter erupted around the room, but Clara could see that some board members were less than amused. Determined to push forward, she formally proposed a motion to eliminate minor fines deemed unreasonable. To everyone's surprise, when it came time for voting, Lenny was officially handed a ballot. Clara watched with bated breath as the board members faced an unexpected dilemma. How could they dismiss a vote cast by a legally recognized board member? The motion passed by a narrow margin, with Lenny's vote making all the difference. The room erupted in cheers and applause from residents who had felt stifled by the previous rules. Clara beamed with pride. They had won a small but significant battle against outdated regulations. However, the HOA leadership was not ready to back down so easily. During subsequent meetings, tensions escalated as certain board members began to vocalize their dissatisfaction, claiming that allowing a llama to participate in governance undermined their authority. "This isn't a circus," one member argued, pointing an accusing finger at Lenny. "We need serious discussions about our community." Clara stood firm against their criticisms. "Serious discussions should include voices from all corners of our community. After all, isn't that what inclusivity means?" She was relentless, embracing her role as an advocate for change with humor and poise. The atmosphere shifted further as residents rallied behind Clara and Lenny. Inspired by their resolve and commitment to fairness, more community members began attending meetings, each eager to voice their thoughts about how they could enhance life in Maplewood. Ideas flowed freely, including plans for pet-friendly events and even a neighborhood cleanup day. With every passing meeting, Clara continued to employ Lenny's voting power strategically. They proposed fun initiatives like creating alpaca-friendly walking paths, an idea sparked by several residents who were passionate about expanding inclusivity to other animals. As these proposals gained traction, it became clear that Lenny's presence was shifting not only opinions, but also the very fabric of community governance. While some board members grew increasingly frustrated by the changes taking place under their noses, others started to embrace the potential for revitalization that Clara and Lenny's antics brought. What had started as a simple desire to keep a beloved pet morphed into a movement advocating for compassion and understanding within Maplewood. Clara understood that while not everyone would agree with their approach, each step forward was another chance for dialogue, a chance to reshape not just rules but also relationships between neighbors. Through laughter and determination, they were transforming what once felt like an uphill battle into a collaborative celebration of community spirit, one llama vote at a time. As the spirit of community engagement continued to flourish within Maplewood, Clara and Lenny took center stage with their whimsical ideas and proposals that captured the imagination of residents. The previous discussions about community pet policies had emboldened many neighbors, who now felt empowered to voice their opinions and express creative suggestions at HOA meetings. One sunny afternoon, Clara was preparing for the next meeting when an idea struck her. What if they extended this newfound inclusivity to not just llamas, but alpacas as well? She raised the topic with Geraldine over coffee, and both women laughed at the absurdity and charm of creating alpaca-friendly walking paths. They envisioned small enhancements throughout the neighborhood, signs adorned with adorable artwork, cozy rest spots along the trails, creating an inviting atmosphere for all plucky pets owners. Determined to make it official, Clara included the proposal in her agenda for the next meeting, where she planned to present the motion in her characteristic light-hearted manner. As she walked into the conference room, Lenny trotted beside her confidently, blissfully unaware that he would soon be playing a crucial role in another transformative moment. During the meeting, as Clara laid out her proposal for alpaca-friendly paths, she described how these spaces could enhance the community experience. "Let's celebrate our love for animals," she declared with enthusiasm. "Why not create welcoming spaces not just for dogs or llamas, but for any furry friends we might consider inviting into our neighborhood?" The board members displayed mixed expressions. Some appeared skeptical, but others seemed intrigued by the idea. Not one to shy away from encouragement, Clara leaned on Lenny's charming presence as she added, "After all, we want our neighborhood to be a place where joy is accessible to everyone, including our pets." A discussion ensued that proved unusually spirited. Board members who had previously clung tightly to traditional rules began engaging others in conversation fueled by excitement over potential changes. As Clara shared more about properties she'd observed that embraced pet-friendly initiatives, residents chimed in with stories of their own beloved animals enjoying time outside. When it came time to cast votes on the motion for alpaca-friendly walking paths, Clara could hardly believe how far they had come as a community. Lenny was officially handed a ballot once more and cast his vote successfully yet again, this time leaning forward while happily munching on a small treat that Clara had tucked into her bag to keep him occupied during the meeting. The overwhelming response from residents led to the proposal's passing. A collective cheer erupted not only from those directly involved in the decision-making process, but also from fellow community members gathered outside waiting eagerly for updates. The once rigid rules now felt like a distant memory as excitement spread throughout Maplewood. Clara and Lenny became symbols of a transformed environment. Their whimsical initiatives sparked a renewed sense of purpose among residents who realized they could advocate for changes that promoted happiness and connection across varied interests. No longer were they just considering mundane bylaws, but rather brainstorming rich possibilities that encouraged individuality, from organizing events celebrating diverse pets to including additional public artwork reflecting their personalities. As tentative smiles turned into enthusiastic applause, Clara sensed an unmistakable energy livening up the air around them. The unexpected nature of their motion had inspired people, bridging gaps that once seemed insurmountable while cultivating unity through love for animals, both exotic and typical alike. She glanced at Lenny, who stood tall next to her with an evident flair for charisma. His energy coursed through her, and she knew that together, they were effecting genuine change in Maplewood, grounded in joy, inclusion, and unexpected laughter during moments when faced with adversity. Clara and her beloved llama had brought forth not just a new rule regarding walking paths, but an enduring ethic whereby every resident felt empowered to share their voices. Where once there had been hurdles of rigidity, now lay pathways decorated with friendship, one whimsical initiative after another fostering growth within a truly vibrant community spirit. As Clara and Lenny continued to make waves in the Maplewood HOA, tensions began escalating between them and the more traditional board members. Despite the recent successes, a faction of the HOA remained steadfast in their belief that allowing Lenny's voting rights undermined the authority and decorum of their organization. Determined not to yield ground, these members sent a stern letter demanding the immediate revocation of Lenny's status and reasserting their commitment to the original bylaws that banned exotic animals. The next meeting promised to be a showdown. Clara arrived feeling a mix of excitement and anxiety, with Lenny trotting alongside her, blissfully unaware of the brewing conflict. Geraldine, always a sight to behold in her vibrant attire, walked in right behind them, exuding confidence. "Today's the day we show them why llamas belong in governance," she declared with a grin. As they settled into their seats, Clara watched as the board president, Mr. Griggs, adjusted his glasses and prepared for what he anticipated would be a mundane meeting. Today, we are here to discuss the continuation of our bylaws concerning exotic animals, Griggs began, his tone dripping with gravity. I believe it is time to formally contest the participation of a llama in our proceedings. Clara felt her heart race. Mr. Griggs, she interjected, standing up confidently, I respectfully oppose your assertion. I believe we need to focus on community engagement rather than exclusion. She glanced at Lenny, who was chewing on his hay contentedly. And might I remind you that my llama has done more to enhance community spirit than many of us in this room. She could see Mr. Griggs bristle at her audacity, but he pressed on. This isn't a circus, Ms. Clara. We must uphold the standards. With impeccable timing, Lenny let out a loud asterisk ba asterisk, drawing laughter from the audience. Clara seized the moment. See, even Lenny agrees. Now isn't that what we want, laughter and joy in our community? The laughter rang through the room, breaking the tension and forcing even the staunchest traditionalists to crack smiles. As discussions continued, Geraldine leaned forward eagerly, ready to turn the tide further in Clara's favor. She pulled out a stack of carefully prepared documents that highlighted stories from other communities where inclusivity had flourished after embracing unconventional ideas. Let's look at these examples, she proposed enthusiastically. Communities that allowed whimsical changes, like pet parks or events for all types of owners, saw an increase in neighborly connections and support. But resistance remained strong. Mr. Griggs glared at Geraldine before refocusing on Clara with renewed fervor. What you're advocating is beyond reason. I move to officially vote against any initiatives that involve alternative animals or ridiculous suggestions like alpaca-friendly walking paths. We cannot allow this chaos. In response, Clara decided it was time for a clever maneuver inspired by her own quirky attorney. I propose an amendment, she declared boldly, drawing everyone's attention back to her. Instead of simply voting down my motion, let us put it to a community-wide vote on whether we should allow residents to suggest alternative pathways for all animals, including alpacas. What? Shocked murmurs rippled through the board as Clara continued. If we're going to uphold democracy in this HOA, let's do it properly. After all, if my llama is good enough to hold a board membership, surely he has a right to vote on matters concerning other furry friends. With that statement, she presented Lenny with a small paper ballot listing potential initiatives. The audience watched in amazement as Lenny playfully nudged a treat toward his ballot as if casting his vote. The atmosphere shifted once again. Laughter erupted once more as even those opposed found it hard not to smile at the whimsical image. Realizing they were losing ground quickly, Mr. Griggs stood up defiantly. This is ridiculous. What next? Will we allow dogs and cats to propose their official positions? This has spiraled into absurdity. Clara saw their desperate attempt for control, yet she pressed forward with a hint of mischief underlying her appeal. Why not? Let's democratize fun. If we can embrace laughter as part of our governance instead of rigid strictures, we might transform this community into something truly special. What followed was an unexpected turning point as board members faced each other unsure of how to proceed amid laughter and shared amusement from the residents swaying their sentiments. By the meeting's end, Clara's proposal for alpaca-friendly walking paths garnered overwhelming community support, not merely as a comical initiative, but as an emblem of positive change driven by whimsy and creativity. The meeting evolved into a lively discussion about embracing individuality for all forms of pet lovers in Maplewood. Lenny's presence had transformed what began as an attempt to stifle Clara's voice into an opportunity for collaboration and celebration. Soon afterward, laughter led to genuine connection among neighbors drawn together by shared values rather than outdated customs. And it all began with one brave llama making waves within a community that was ripe for change. The atmosphere in the Maplewood community reached a fever pitch as Clara and Lenny's influence grew stronger. In the wake of numerous successful initiatives, it became increasingly apparent that the traditionalists within the HOA, led by Mr. Griggs, were not going to back down without a fight. Their disdain for the newfound inclusivity simmered just beneath the surface, waiting for the perfect moment to ignite. The stage was set for what would become an unforgettable confrontation at the next HOA meeting. Clara and Geraldine arrived early, strategizing how to combat any last-ditch attempts by the board to undermine their progress. Lenny, blissfully unaware of the tension surrounding him, ambled eagerly beside Clara while munching on hay. As residents filled the room, Clara's heart raced with anticipation. The air crackled with excitement as people whispered and exchanged glances, Word had spread about their victory with alpaca-friendly paths. When Mr. Griggs took his place at the head of the table, Clara noticed how his jaw clenched slightly. He was clearly ready to reassert control. "Today," he thundered, adjusting his glasses, "we address what has become a farce within our organization." Clara leaned forward, readying herself for what she knew would be a spirited discussion. "We must reconsider the consequences of allowing pets, especially llamas, to participate in our governance." Before he could continue, Clara shot her hand up. "I'd like to respond," she exclaimed. "This isn't just about one animal or one person. This is about fostering belonging and joy in our community." Lenny chimed in with an enthusiastic **, eliciting laughter from the audience that broke through the tension. As everyone chuckled at Lenny's delightful interruption, Geraldine seized her chance to present a compelling argument backed by data showcasing neighboring communities thriving under more inclusive policies. "Mr. Griggs," she began confidently, "look at these examples. Neighborhoods that embrace diversity, whether it's in pets or residents, see an increase in happiness and connection." She paused dramatically for effect before adding, "Why not celebrate our love for animals instead of stifling it?" Yet Mr. Griggs was undeterred. "We cannot allow this nonsense to continue," he retorted sharply. "I move that we officially remove any rights my fellow board members have attempted to grant to this llama." Seeing tension rise among board members who had previously expressed support for creative initiatives reassured Clara this was precisely where they needed to leverage public sentiment further. Determined to derail Griggs's motion, she sprang into action. "How can we truly govern if we aren't embracing all voices? I propose we put this decision up for a community-wide vote," she declared passionately. "If my llama gets a say in community matters, shouldn't every resident have one too?" Gasps rippled through the audience. They hadn't expected such an audacious move. The sound of approval mixed with laughter resonated as Lenny playfully nosed at Clara's proposed ballot design, a cheeky nod in favor of inclusivity. Griggs fumed but couldn't ignore how many residents appeared energized by this new idea. His power waned as folks began leaning toward collaboration rather than opposition. Clara could feel a shift happening among them. Conversation flowed more freely as residents exchanged smiles and nods. As votes were cast on whether to approve Lenny's participation moving forward and on plans for upcoming events, the atmosphere felt electric. Lenny's charm had united folks who believed wholeheartedly that their voices mattered. When it was confirmed that Clara's proposal passed overwhelmingly, cheers erupted around the room. Mr. Griggs sat red-faced as laughter filled what had once been a place of rigid control. A dawning realization washed over him. Resistance was futile against such spirited momentum. In the aftermath of this transformative gathering, it became evident that boards aiming to stifle joy and creativity could no longer hold power over an engaged populace driven by imagination and connection. The very foundation upon which they built their arguments began to crumble amid collective celebration from those who felt liberated by newfound communal spirit. Or perhaps it started with one fearless llama inspiring change. As Clara hugged Lenny tightly amid cheers and joyful chatter following their victory announcement, she knew there had been a significant turning point not just for her beloved pet, but also for Maplewood itself. A community now ready to embrace individuality while celebrating unique quirks together, rather than facing exclusion with strict bylaws binding elements hidden under outdated conventions. The HOA soon appeared helpless against what they could no longer suppress. A blossoming landscape where laughter flourished and genuine connections thrived among neighbors who sought belonging rather than obstruction after all these years. And so Lenny, the delightful vote-casting llama, became a symbol not merely of whimsy, but inspiration igniting enthusiastic transformation possible within every heart willing to join together under shared dreams and aspirations ahead. The annual Maplewood Pet Parade had finally arrived, and the community buzzed with excitement as colorful decorations adorned the streets. Clara stood outside her house, radiant in a flowery sundress, while Lenny was outfitted in a festive costume complete with glittering streamers and a flower crown that perfectly matched Clara's attire. The duo had become local legends after their recent triumphs, and today was a celebration not just of pets but of community spirit and individuality. As they made their way to the parade route, Clara felt an overwhelming sense of pride. The past few months had been a whirlwind of meetings and initiatives, but now she was ready to bask in the joy and camaraderie that had blossomed within Maplewood. Residents waved excitedly as they passed by, many shouting words of encouragement and congratulating her on their successful efforts to create a more inclusive neighborhood. When Clara reached the start of the parade, she looked around at the vibrant scene before her. Dogs decked out in boaties, cats riding in decorated carts, and even an assortment of smaller animals like rabbits and guinea pigs nestled securely in carriers. It struck her how wonderfully diverse the community had become, not just in terms of pets, but also in how residents interacted with one another, celebrating their quirks and charms. As the parade began to move, Clara could see Mr. Griggs slightly off to the side, watching with a mix of bemusement and reluctant admiration. He couldn't deny that something special had taken root within this community. Even he found himself chuckling at Lenny's antics as he pranced down the street. The atmosphere was electric. Neighbors cheered each other on while children giggled at every whimsical sight. "Let's hear it for our beloved llama," Clara called out enthusiastically as she led Lenny into view. The crowd erupted into applause and cheers. It felt like all the joyful energy from previous meetings had coalesced into this single moment. Lenny responded with a playful asterisk ba asterisk, clearly enjoying his newfound celebrity status. As they marched along, Clara took note of how many people held signs. "Llamas for Unity," read one. "Celebrate our pets," exclaimed another. It warmed Clara's heart to see how far they'd come since those initial confrontations with the HOA. What once felt divisive had transformed into an all-embracing celebration reflecting their shared values, a tapestry woven from compassion and acceptance. Midway through the parade route, Geraldine joined them, sporting her signature vibrant style that included a bright feather boa draped elegantly over her shoulder. "Isn't it magnificent?" she exclaimed breathlessly as she caught up with Clara. "This is what it's all about, celebrating differences and fostering community bonds." Clara nodded enthusiastically. "I never imagined we'd turn things around so quickly. It feels like we've unlocked something beautiful." As they continued through the jubilant crowd, Lenny played his part flawlessly, interacting with children who reached out to pet him and basking in attention from delighted onlookers. At one point, he paused dramatically near a group gathered around an intricately decorated float resembling a giant doghouse. With impeccable timing, Lenny leaned over to munch on some grass, a perfect photo opportunity captured by several cameras flashing in delight. Finally reaching the central stage set up for awards at the end of the parade route, Clara prepared for what would be an emotional conclusion to their day. She anxiously shifted on her feet as announcements were made regarding various categories: Best Dressed Pet, Most Creative Costume, and ultimately Pet of the Year asterisk. Her heart raced as she realized there was a chance Lenny might just win recognition for all he represented within Maplewood. When Lenny was announced as Pet of the Year asterisk, joy erupted from both residents and fellow participants alike. Applause filled the air while Clara beamed with pride for her beloved friend standing proudly before them all. Taking center stage with Lenny by her side during acceptance speeches brought tears to Clara's eyes as she spoke passionately about community spirit. Today isn't just about celebrating our pets, it symbolizes our commitment to inclusivity. Here to embracing our uniqueness together. With cheers echoing around them amidst laughter and happy tears blended seamlessly within that moment, the bond between neighbors strengthened further through love for pets, and all thanks to one fearless llama who sought teamwork above all else. The annual pet parade became not only a joyous celebration, but also solidified Maplewood's identity transformation, a tapestry brought together through laughter rather than barriers where everyone could relish being themselves alongside their furry companions.